All right. Hello there. My name is Yogurt, and I want to welcome you to. All right, let's start over. Hello there. My name is Yogurt. I want to welcome you to the new player guide to retail World of Warcraft. I'm making this video series and VOD playlist inspired by two things. One is the Zero to Hero challenges in World of Warcraft. This is where a content creator will take a character from humble beginnings in a new patch cycle and grouping up with strangers to meet a certain goal for the season, whether it's timing a certain amount of dungeons or completing, getting a high score in PvP or completing the raid at AOTC or cutting edge level. The second thing that inspired this was Zizarin's Explaining Everything series for Path of Exile. I'm sure there are many folks out there providing content for new players in World of Warcraft, but I think it would be great to watch an older player start fresh from the beginning. So, unlike some of the Zero to Hero World of Warcraft videos out there, I'm going to do a few things a little different. I'm going to level a character on a brand new World of Warcraft account. You can see that open in front. We haven't even purchased the War Within expansion, which is the latest expansion for World of Warcraft. I'm going to do this on a completely random class. I am notorious for having a really hard time picking what class I want to play for a season or for a patch. So I'm just going to let fate decide on this one. And then once we complete our leveling experience, I'll show you how to gear up your character in the latest patch of World of Warcraft retail. Currently, that's season 2 of the War Within. If you're looking for information on what to do once you hit the level cap and want to start diving into the end game pillars of retail World of Warcraft, there are plenty of resources out there. If I haven't gotten to that point, I would suggest taking a look at other content creators that have published new player guides for WoW retail rating, Mythic Plus, and or PvP. So just to start, a few things to note on how I got to the screen that I'm on that's in front of you right now. You can create an account and buy or download the game by going to battle.net in your browser of choice. I've selected so far to only pay for a 1 month subscription because knowing me, I won't continue this video series past the first episode, but we're going to try. And that base subscription will let you level all the way to 70 before requiring the purchase of the latest expansion. You can see up here in the left-hand side of my screen the upgrade button, which would take me to battle.net and allow me to buy the latest expansion, which is currently on sale for $25. If you do purchase the War Within expansion, it will come with a level 70 boost that's going to put you right at the start of the current expansion. You'll get to use this. It's one boost. You'll get to use it on a class of your choice that you've unlocked. And we're going to start at the very beginning just so that we can walk through some of the base parts of the game, features, things to know, and just get that full authentic newcomer experience. So let's begin. First thing what we're going to do is talk about realms. So once you buy the game, create your account, download, update, it's a pretty big game, you will be able to log in on the BattleNet, and you'll be able to select from a handful of different versions of World of Warcraft. This content is going to be primarily about retail World of Warcraft. So retail is the nomenclature that's used for the most current and continually updated version of WoW. And with retail, you're going to get seasons that release every so often that contain add-ons, new zones, new features, and additions to each of the end game pillars of World of Warcraft. So for retail, there are raids, which is one of the primary end game pieces of content to complete. They range across multiple difficulties. We'll talk about more about those later. There are dungeons, which involve a party of 5 people. Raids are larger. They involve typically a minimum of 10 people. So dungeons have an infinite semi-infinite scaling system called Mythic Plus, which increases the difficulty level. So a lot of folks will run dungeons at that high difficulty level as a form of the end game content. And then there's also PvP, or player versus player. I am not a PvP player, so we'll be focusing mostly on PvE here. We will talk about it in some capacity. In some cases, there's seasons where it's encouraged to get gear from PvP, especially at the start of a brand new season. But we're going to be focusing mostly on PvE. There's tons of good PvP content creators out there. My best recommendation, if you're interested in player versus player, is to go to YouTube after you've maybe watched this video or taken a stab at WoW and picked out your class that you're going to like, and find a content creator that plays the class that you want to play. But like I said, we're going to focus on PvE. With the monthly subscription, you also get access to what's called Classic World of Warcraft. Something I see on Reddit a whole lot is, which version of WoW should I play? Should I play Classic? Should I play Retail? Within Classic World of Warcraft, there's actually, I think, 4 sub versions. There is Cataclysm Classic. Essentially, in 2019, Blizzard released Classic WoW. It brought us all the way back in the series of expansion packs to the very beginning. And then they've re-released expansion packs over that time period to the point where we are now at Cataclysm. So it was Classic WoW in 2019. The Burning Crusade released shortly after that. Wrath of the Lich King expansion released shortly after that. And then we got to Cataclysm. Soon to release in July, so about a month from now, that section of Classic WoW will be moving into Mists of Pandaria, which is the expansion that comes after Cataclysm. So they're just continuing to sort of go down the line of expansions, and we'll see where that lands us. This year, they released Classic Anniversary, which is essentially a re-release of the 2019 Classic with a couple quality of life improvements. But Classic Anniversary is that original 1 to 60 World of Warcraft experience that many people love. It is expected, I'm not 100% sure if it's confirmed, but it's expected that this will move into the Burning Crusade at some point in the future, but the timeline I don't think is certain yet. And then also within Classic and the Anniversary realms is what's called Hardcore Classic. And if you're familiar with Hardcore from any other games like Diablo or Path of Exile, basically when your character dies, it's over. So they have implemented a hardcore version of World of Warcraft. I wouldn't obviously recommend that one to new players just because there's a good amount to learn. And then the last version of Classic is called Classic Season of Discovery. This is again set in that original vanilla 1 to 60 time frame, but it allowed Blizzard to sort of experiment with different ideas. So they started with a lower level cap with raids that released at that lower level cap and expanded the level cap over the season. And then they actually ended it with some brand new content and a brand new Classic raid. It also allowed them to experiment with classes. So we'll talk more about like roles throughout this video, but certain classes can only fit into certain roles to help support your party, and they kind of broke the barrier on that. And they also introduced a rune system that allowed folks to bring in abilities from other versions of the game, or totally brand new abilities that weren't in the Classic setting before. So it was a lot of fun for a lot of folks. That version has been announced that they will no longer be adding any new content. The servers will still be there. However, if you're just starting out in World of Warcraft, I would probably recommend putting your efforts into Retail, Classic Anniversary, or Classic Cataclysm, knowing that in a month from now it will be Classic Mists of Pandaria. I'm like I said, I'm not a Classic player. There's plenty of resources out there from Classic content creators, so you can take a look on YouTube for Classic Anniversary, Classic Hardcore, or Classic Cataclysm / Mists of Pandaria resources, and there's plenty out there. But back to the original point, you do get access to all of this, including leveling a character to level 70 in retail with just the base subscription. So one-time payment of $15 will get you a full month to explore all these different avenues. And then of course you can continue to pay for your subscription to keep that going, and then you can upgrade to the War Within if you decide to stick with retail. Cool. So now we can start to, I mentioned it 10 minutes ago, but talk about realms. So you download BattleNet, you get into this screen, and the first thing that is not super apparent anymore is you'll be able to choose a realm. So realms have changed a lot. If you play any sort of online games, you'll be super familiar with a realm system or a shard system or server system. It's basically a server group of players, and they're set by Blizzard. It's not like a sandbox game, and you can see here there's a ton of them. So obviously, I'm playing for the United States. There's a selection of realms that are built for new players. I'm going to be honest with you. I would not recommend starting on one of these. I would recommend, if you have friends that already play the game, to start on that realm. They've removed a lot of the barriers from realms. Originally, you used to only be able to play with characters on your realm or with players on your realm. They've since basically removed that across the board, where your name will now have a tag of what realm you're on, so you'll see folks from different realms when you're playing. One of the caveats to this, which we'll talk about like way later, is the current crafting system, which relies on other players to help you craft your gear. So this is the main reason why I recommend selecting a high or a full pop realm. Obviously, realm sizes have downsides. When a new patch launches or a new expansion comes out, many of the full realms can have queue times for the first couple of weeks. It does tend to die down, but it can be frustrating. So if you're just fully playing solo on your own, you don't have friends with a realm that you can join, you can pretty much pick anyone that you would like. You'll also see here some of the types originally, and if you played a version of Classic World of Warcraft, the types would be PvE, PvP, and RP. So player versus environment, player versus player, and role playing, and then sometimes hybridization. So PvP, RP, and PV. Well, all the RP servers are PvE. Um, and so role playing, obviously, these are servers designated to role playing, which is an often unmentioned end game pillar in its own right. If you are a role player, if you like to um, embody your character and express yourself that way, I would definitely recommend the RP realms. They are um, very active and very fun if that's your kind of thing. It's not my kind of thing. Like I said, I'm a PvE player. Now you'll see all the other realm types are normal. They used to be PvP or PvE. They have since sort of mashed that together into just a server is a server, and you can elect to turn on what's called world PvP. Again, we'll talk about that a little bit later. And then, of course, the population on the right. Now, one thing that is not clear from this screen is time zones. So each one of these servers is actually tied to a time zone. So my recommendation would be just to head to your favorite search engine and type in what time zone are the WoW servers in, and you'll find plenty of um, resources. Here's one from Fandom that says US realm list by data center. Um, and what you want to probably do, although it's not integral, is find one in your time zone, because when you do create your character and you log in, there'll be a little clock in the game, and a lot of the scheduling for events will be based off of that clock. So if you're an East Coast gamer and you join a West Coast server, you might find that things start a little bit later. And again, this really depends, but like when you're looking for a guild, again, stuff we'll talk about later, you want to just pay attention to that time zone and make sure that it meets your criteria. It also does mean that your data center is closer, which has some, benefits to it, but it's not, not critical. So for this exercise, I'm going to go on the server that I normally play on. It's Area 52. It is an East Coast server. It's pretty popular. It's probably the second most popular server. It is Horde heavy, but that doesn't matter much. We'll talk about Horde and Alliance in a little bit. Another popular server is Illidan. That's, I believe, a West Coast server. That's where the top US raiding guild plays on. So obviously that attracts some attention and some fans. So, you can feel free to take a look at US Realm List by data center and pick the server that works for you. For now, we're going to go to Area 52. And one of the other goals of this is not to sort of group up with friends. It may happen inadvertently just because I will be on a server that my current guild is on, but we'll see kind of what happens there. So here is the character creation screen. On the left and right sides, you'll see a selection of races. And on the right side, you'll see the races of the Horde. And on the left side, you'll see the races of the Alliance. These are what is available to a starter account. There are additional races that can be unlocked through in-game achievements and pathways. So there's different variations of dwarves, there's different variations of elves, there's different variations of gnomes, draenei, and then there down here is the Drakthir. Same thing on the Horde side. There's different variations of orcs, taurens, trolls, and the Drakthir as well. There are also races that aren't here, like the Volpera. So we'll talk about those at a later date, I'm sure. But like I said, for this video series, we're just going to kind of stick to what we got. So one of the first things that we'll need to decide is Horde or Alliance, because that's going to determine our race. A few things about races to know is that they do have some benefits, and you can right click to learn more. They're called racial traits, and Blizzard gives a high level overview of what these are in this little window. I would definitely recommend taking a look at some more resources. I'll try and add some in as I can or pull some up on the screen. But you can kind of go down here and take a look, and just a few things to note from the PVE side of things. There's always talk about racials being important because they do have, some of them do have very powerful effects. If it's your first time playing through the game, I'd really just follow what speaks to you. The only time that racials are really going to be a significant impact is if you are way beyond this video and you are doing the top tier, highest content at the end of the game. And in that case, you're obviously really invested that you can purchase a race change from Blizzard and switch over to whatever race that you need. I will say, just for those that are, achievement focused, a couple of the most popular races on the Alliance side are the dwarves. The dwarf racial that says may take on a stone form will remove effects on your character, and it's on a relatively short cooldown, and it can be very impactful. We'll talk about that later. The other one that is super popular is Night Elf. The top racial trait there, you can see it says can fade into the shadows. And we'll talk about this a little bit later too. It just allows you to drop combat and basically perform actions as you would out of combat. Some of those can be like mounting. For PvP, gnomes can be popular. I don't know if that's still 100% true, but they have a racial ability that allows you to escape from snares and speed altering effects. The Draenei, the Worgen, and the Pandaren are all relatively harmless, along with the humans. They used to have a really powerful racial that is no longer as powerful as it was. And then on the Horde side, I feel like really the most popular one tends to be Troll. Their top racial trait, Berserking, increases your haste. So you get to cast faster. So you'll often see a lot of Troll druids, occasionally shamans. We'll talk about stats and casting, and we'll talk about all that later. Goblin is also another good one, not necessarily for the PvE end game aspect, although it has had that top racial trait, Rocket Jump Forward, gives you an extra mobility skill, so it has had its place. And then each race can also have an impact in one of the other in-game pillars, which is rating. But again, that's going to be for like the top end content. A most recent example of this was with the Liberation for Undermine Race to World First. A couple players on the cutting edge of this race switched over to a certain race that allowed them to teleport to make a fight easier. So there's some like weird racial nuances that come into play in certain PvE scenarios. But like I said, for the most part, follow your bliss and, you know, pick what looks cool to you, which is exactly what we're going to be doing here. So first choice is Alliance versus Horde. I talked a little bit about how they've sort of torn down the barriers between realms. They've also torn down a lot of the barriers between Alliance versus Horde. So if you're a fan of like Warcraft 3, or you're a fan of sort of, you know, the us versus them, red versus blue, a lot of that through the story development has sort of moved away from the us versus them, and it becomes more of a communal how do we help defeat the greater evil type of story, which is great. There is still some of that, you know, old hatred that shines through and propels some of the story. That being said, when it comes to playing alongside one another, a lot of the barriers have been removed. So things like running Mythic Plus dungeons or running raids can be done on any character that's part of any faction on any realm. So it doesn't matter. You can also join guilds. You can run dungeons. The one thing that they still haven't quite figured out, which again we'll talk about that later in the video, is grouping together. So like using some of the systems or tools to put yourself into a queue to automatically create a group. Those are still same faction. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But basically what I'm trying to say is, again, follow your bliss, pick whatever you feel is calling to you. There will be some key differences for sure. Major city faction capitals behind this orc, you can see Orgrimmar. Behind this human, you can kind of see and through the windows some of Stormwind. We don't typically spend a ton of time in these anymore, but they do still work as sort of like base faction capitals that have portals out to the most recent zones. And then down across the bottom, you're going to see classes. So World of Warcraft has, I think, 13 classes now: Warrior, Hunter, Mage, Rogue, Priest, Warlock, Paladin, Druid, Shaman, Monk, Demon Hunter, Death Knight, and Evoker. Evoker is the most recently released class. It's also tied specifically to this Drakthir race, which, like the Pandaren, is available for both Alliance and Horde. For this exercise, I did say that I was going to be spinning a wheel, but because I want it to be authentic to the new player experience, I have chosen to remove Demon Hunter, Death Knight, and Evoker. However, we'll definitely talk about these classes, and if that's something that you want to do, all you need to do is pick a class, level it to 10, and that is going to unlock the Drakthir race, the Evoker class, the Demon Hunter class, and the Death Knight class. So just a brief overview of the classes. Warrior is your pretty traditional warrior. I mean, you can see him here on the screen, spinning, flipping, and hitting things with two big two-handed weapons. The warrior has every class except for 2 have 3 different specializations. We'll talk about those later in the video, but the warrior can be a DPS, a damage per second, or a damage dealer, and it can be a tank. The hunter, pretty standard, bow class, can only be a damage dealer. DPS specs has 3 different DPS specs. One is focused on pets. One is focused on the art of the bow and arrow, marksmanship, and then one is melee, focusing on close combat, traps, things like that. For mage, pretty standard mage class. They also are DPS only, like the hunter. They have 3 different specs focused around sort of the elements. So they have a fire spec, which casts fire spells, frost spec, which casts frost spells, and what's called an arcane spec, which casts arcane magic. The rogue is the 3rd DPS only spec or class, and pretty straightforward. You can stealth, you can pickpocket, you can do all the classic rogue things that roguey people like to do. They have their 3 specs. One is called Outlaw. It's very pirate focused. One is called Assassination. It's very poison, bleed. And then one is called Subtlety, which is kind of an enigma to me. It's a spec that I have a very hard time figuring out. Again, only DPS specs for the rogue. The priest is the next class in the lineup. The priest has 2 healing specs. One's called Discipline, one's called Holy, and then 1 DPS spec called Shadow. Shadow priest does shadowy damage. They do a lot of stuff with the void, tendrils, kind of summoning temporary pets from the great beyond, that very like Call of Cthulhu type vibes from the Shadow Priest. And then the healing specs are one of the simplest and one of the most challenging. The Holy Priest is very straightforward. You cast heals on your friendly team members to keep them alive. And the Discipline healing specialization, you're using things like shields and you're doing damage to heal people back up in your group or your party. This is probably a great segue or a little tangent into the roles. So I mentioned a warrior can DPS or tank. Hunter, mage, and rogue are DPS only. Priest can be a DPS or a healer. Within every 5-man group, you're going to want 1 tank, 1 healer, and 3 DPS. 5-man groups are for dungeon content. And then within every raid group, the ratios vary, but typically it's 2 tanks, 3 to 5 healers, kind of depending on what you're doing and what the difficulty level is. And then the rest are all DPS up to the whatever cap of that difficulty is. So we'll keep going through the classes, and then we'll talk a little bit more about like what I'm looking for and looking forward to and hoping for when we spin the wheel. The next class, again, all DPS on the Warlock. The Warlock, as you can see here from this demonstration, shadow magic, chaos magic, demons, summoning pets. There is 1 spec entirely built around summoning pets and having them deal damage for you. There's another that is based on like the fire and brimstone and meteors falling from the ground. And then there's a 3rd specialization called Affliction that is focused on what are called damage over time spells, or dots. So you can think of this as a short cast or an instant cast spell that you put onto a target and it will last for a set number of seconds. A lot of folks like gameplay like this where they're maintaining multiple dots. Very popular in Classic. It's a little bit like juggling. And then the Paladin brings us to our first multi-role 3-role spec. So the Paladin has 1 spec that is DPS. It's called Retribution, focused on two-handed weapons, holy power, hitting things with big hammers. The 2nd spec, which is I think what's up here on the demo, is Protection. So 1-hander and a shield. This is a tanking spec, so you'll be a tank if you prefer this spec. And same thing here, right? The whole Paladin trope, holy lights, divine, energy, and this one very protection, very Captain America like. You to throw a shield around and hit your enemies, and very similar to like Hammerden in Diablo. And I say very similar, I guess visually very similar to Hammerden in Diablo. You'll be spinning hammers around your character, not quite to the extent as what you might see in Diablo, but similar. And then Holy Paladin, unlike Priest, the previous healer, Holy Paladin is what's known as a melee healer. So obviously melee, up close fighting, they will use some of their attacks to generate holy power to then spend on heals for their party. Really cool spec in my opinion. And then we're going to change races, so you can see some of the classes are tied to specific races. So we're going to just switch over to Night Elf to talk about the Druid. So the Druid is the only class with 4 specializations. So you can see we were just in our Night Elf form, and then we shifted into a cat. So the Druid has a melee DPS spec called Feral Druid, where you're primarily in cat form and you're doing, a lot of claw attacks with bleeds. You have a ranged DPS form, which is called Balanced Druid, and in this spec, you're summoning the powers of nature and the moon, kind of alternating between balance of these spells and using them to attack your enemy. You also get a form that's not pictured here called Moonkin form. If you're a D&D player, it's very similar to the owl bear. So it's a big funny looking guy, much like me. And then there are also 1 healing specialization and 1 tank specialization. So the healing specialization is Restoration Druid. Similar to Affliction Warlock with its damage over time, Restoration Druid is focused on heals over time. So you use your instant cast spells or short cast time spells to put effects on your team members that will heal them at a steady rate. They do still have some larger heals, and they get bonuses for stacking multiples of those heals over time. So very cool. It is also known as a healer that is very flexible in switching between some of these forms. So you'll often find Resto Druids switching into cat form to deal damage while those heal over time effects are on their party. And then Guardian Druid is the 4th and final spec, tanking spec, and you are a bear. And there's many different bear forms that you can acquire throughout the game. And you just roll through the dungeon, you're swiping, you're clawing, you're building up stacks of armor. And occasionally, we'll talk about these when we get to the most current expansion. You'll be using like lunar spells and some of the moon spells that you'll see from Balanced Druid in there as well. Really, really flexible class. Really good class overall. And then we get to Shaman. So Shaman is one of those other sort of racially locked classes. It's available for dwarves, Draenei, and some of the other variations of those. Shamans are basically all about elemental magic in terms of like lightning and earth and fire, compared to like the mage that was like frost and arcane. You can see him here with his sort of staticky hands, and it's got 3 specs, of course. It's got 2 damage dealing specs. One is the ranged DPS spec, Elemental Shaman. It's all about what you see here: conjuring spells, lobbing lava at your enemies and lightning bolts, and summoning these elementals to help you defeat your enemies. And then the other DPS spec is called Enhancement Shaman. It is a melee DPS spec, and it wields 2 weapons, typically dual wielding. It's all about attacking quick. Also, very similar thematic: lightning attacks, fire attacks. A lot of lightning, and it can use a talent to turn into sort of like an ascendant level, which harnesses the elements and attacks really fast. And then the 3rd spec is a healing spec for the shaman. It is Restoration Shaman. Restoration Shaman hits on sort of the other side of the elemental area where we're looking at water, a lot of like restorative water. Pretty straightforward healer too. Brings a lot of great group utility. Really great spec overall. And then we get into Monk. So Monk is one of the other sort of try classes where you can be a DPS, a healer, or a tank. The DPS spec is called Windwalker Monk. And the really cool thing about this one is, it's very kung fu, very punch, kick. You can see it here. And the really cool thing about this spec is that it gets a bonus for not hitting the same ability twice in a row. Whereas like a elemental shaman, you might be casting a lot of lightning bolt or chain lightning. With Monk, you get a damage bonus for pressing different abilities, which kind of leads to that like combo style play style that's not always apparent in all the other classes. And then the healing spec is called Mistweaver. Much like Paladin, this is another melee healing spec. You will actually heal your party by doing damage, and you will spread heal over times with kicks, and super fun class overall, or super fun spec overall. And then Brewmaster is the tank spec. The theme here is essentially brew. So you're drinking brews, and they can be tea brews and they can be brews, that will help reduce your incoming damage or damage that you've taken, allowing you to sort of stagger that out over time. You'll be throwing kegs in the air to land on the enemy players or enemy mobs, and then you'll be using an ability called Breath of Fire to then kind of light them up. So really cool theme. It is probably one of the more advanced tanks to play, but with the next upcoming patch, they're looking at sort of making some updates to it. So, and then the last three specs, we'll just talk about them. I can't sort of show you them on here, but the Demon Hunter, if you're a fan of the Warcraft series at all, the Demon Hunter is Illidan, basically in a class. This is one class that only has two specializations. It has Havoc Demon Hunter, which is a DPS spec, and it has Vengeance Demon Hunter, which is a tank spec. Very edgy class. You get to turn into a big demon. You wield what are known as warglaives. Again, just take a look at a picture of Illidan, and you'll kind of get the gist of what the Demon Hunter is. And then Death Knight is essentially the kind of the opposite of Paladin. Death Knight is a resurrected warrior that has the powers of undeath. You can think of things kind of like Necromancer in a way, but if a Necromancer wore plate armor and had a big sword. So they have two DPS specs and one tank spec. The DPS specs are Unholy and Frost. Unholy Death Knight really leans into the Necromancer style, where you have a ghoul at your side and you're summoning an abomination and you're summoning other minions and liches, and they're casting frost bolts, all kind of while doing your own thing with this sort of inflicting your enemies with wounds and then bursting them to deal damage. It's an outstanding specialization to play. And then Frost on the other side of things is a dual wielding spec, so one-handers in each hand. And Frost DK is all about sort of like frost dragons. So it's based off of, it has abilities that will summon a big frost dragon that rides over your character and deals damage. It freezes your enemies. And it is a very straightforward spec to play. It can be relatively simple, but it is definitely difficult to master, especially depending on, what version of the talents you're playing. And then the tank spec is called Blood. And Blood Death Knight is a super interesting tank. It's one of many of the tank content creators' favorite tanks to play, because they get to have a lot more control over their character's life. The way that the Blood DK tank works, Instead of blocking damage up front, which it does to an extent, it really relies on a specific ability called Death Strike, which will heal the Death Knight back up after taking substantial damage. And it kind of touches a little bit on sort of the blood magic aspects of things. You're inflicting diseases to your enemies, and then you're sort of popping those with an ability called Blood Boil. So really, really cool. If when you're thinking of Death Knight, you can think of like Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse and stuff like that. And then the Evoker is the latest class. It can only be played by the Drakthir race, which will unlock at level 10. So you're welcome to kind of explore that and see how it goes for you. The Drakthir and the Evokers released with an expansion called Dragonflight, which I believe is where we kind of start with a new player experience. They kind of launch you into the last expansion so that you get a little caught up on the story. So Evokers are tied to Drakthir. They are dragons. They have 3 specializations. One of them is a DPS specialization. One of them is classified as a DPS specialization, but it's called by the community a support specialization. And then one of them is a healer. So the pure damage dealing spec is called Devastation. You're looking at things like Breathing Fire and Breathing Frost Beams and flying over your enemies and bombarding them. Really, really cool spec. The DPS support specialization is called Augmentation. It relies on Black Dragon magic, which I'm sure we'll talk about dragons at some point, but not integral to this, to sort of buff your allies and weaken your enemies. And very, very controversial spec in the World of Warcraft community. In its introduction, first it came as a surprise. Nobody was really expecting it to launch. They put it in midway through an expansion, and they never do that. But it was very controversial because it was essentially considered mandatory for all groups at the beginning. People don't like it when things are mandatory. So it has since sort of gone down in popularity. It was also theoretically, I think, intended for a new player because it is relatively simple and it has a low direct damage impact on your group. It's got a relatively simple rotation. It allows you to like look at things and like, how can I help, rather than how much damage can I do, how much healing can I do, how many mobs can I tank. Which is funny because if you're an absolutely brand new player, I suppose they're expecting you to purchase the War Within and maybe you get that level 70 boost, but new players can't even unlock that one. And then the third spec, the healing spec, is called Preservation, very focused on green dragon magic, which is like restoration, healing, your breath attacks that you would deal damage with turn into heals. Really, really cool. Also was very overpowered when it was first introduced. I shouldn't say overpowered. It was very well positioned for the patch that it was in when it was released and the expansion that it was in. It has since died down pretty heavily in popularity. So that is an overview of the classes. I am realizing now that I talked about every spec for every class, with the exception of sort of the warrior and the hunter. So with the warrior, I mentioned 2 damage specs and 1 tank spec. The damage specs are arms, which focuses on having 1 big 2-handed weapon, and then fury, which is a lot more fast paced and has, as you can see here, 2 2-handed weapons. So if you like big weapons, warrior is pretty good. Again, so is paladin and death knight in that regard. And then protection warriors, your straight standard tank, right? Sword, board, getting into the fray, a lot of physical stuff, a lot of shouting, a lot of stuns, a lot of roars. Really fun class to play that focuses primarily on blocking. So we've talked about races, factions, and classes. Now we can kind of get into it. So I'm going to pull up another screen here. Hopefully this works. And the first thing that we're going to do is we're just going to leave it all to chance. So we're going to flip a coin. Heads is going to be the Horde, and tails is going to be the Alliance for our faction. So we'll let that go. Heads, we're going to play Horde. And then I apologize, they didn't have a dark mode for the spin the wheel, but I am going to pop it over to the white screen. and we're going to spin the wheel to pick our class. Now I have removed the level 10 gated classes, so we're not going to be playing Death Knight, Demon Hunter, or Evoker. I will try to work that into a future video if that comes about, for sure. But we're going to click spin the wheel, and we're going to see what we get. Rogue. Very interesting. Okay. So what I was really hoping for here as a veteran player was just a spec that had more than just damage or a class that had more than just a damage dealing spec. So I was looking for shaman, druid, monk, pretty much everything except for warlock, rogue, mage, and hunter. The reason for that is because those specializations make it a little bit quicker to get into some of the different groups, especially at lower levels. So when you're leveling up, if you want to run a dungeon, you can switch over to your healing specialization or your tanking specialization, and you can kind of go from there. But that is not in the fate today, and I said I was going to stick to what it said. So we're going to play a rogue. So with the rogue, pretty positive every single race can be a rogue. And because, I'm really not focused on the top tier and end all be all. Normally, if I was, I would pick a dwarf rogue to get that extra ability. I'm going to pick the PvP classic, the undead rogue. So character creation is the next step here. So once we pick our class and we pick our race and our faction, we're going to just click customize, and then they really strip you down there to pick out your features. So I'm going to just go through some of the skin colors. The character customization is really, really good in World of Warcraft, in my opinion. It does vary a little bit race to race. So I think I'm going to go with this skin color. And then skin type, you originally all undead were this bony skin type. And then they introduced some more cleaner, different types of body styles for the undead. So I'm going to go with a fresh corpse here. And then we'll go through and pick out a face that works for us. I usually like something that's a little bit kinder, but I'm not really finding a lot of kind faces here. We'll stick with this guy. Hairstyle, I tend to go bald with my characters. I don't know why. I'm not bald, but they've got tons of different hairstyles. So we'll just take a quick look through there. And I'll pick one just to show you the different hair colors as well. So I'll just grab got full plenty of different hair colors too. They've got a wild pink, some white, some grays, green. Again, these vary based on race as well. And then for the undead, you'll get some specific features that you can change, like jaw features and face features, depending on the race. Some races, obviously, you'll get a beard. That's not one that we have, much to my chagrin, with the undead. So I think I'm just going to leave them with normal jaw. I'm going to take a look at the facial features. We'll just leave those normal too. Eye color, and then you can also do eyesight. So you can have eyesight, left, right, both. With undead, you can also just have sockets, which is pretty crazy, pretty creepy. I think I'm going to go with, we're just going to go all the way down. And then, my name is No Yogurt, but because I'm going to be playing on these different characters, I'm going to name this guy Oatmeal. And we'll go from there. So here we are. We're on the character select screen. In this expansion, they released campsites, which are very similar to some of the other loading screens for other MMOs. Up at the top, you can access different modes. Sometimes they have special events that are happening. You can access the shop. In the shop, you can buy services. So say that you level up your character and you get super into the game and you did want to change your race, you can purchase that. They often go on sale. Right now we're in the summer sale, so everything's kind of like 30% off for these. You can also change factions if you decide. They did remove, oh no, character transfer is still here. You can move to a different realm if you want to. You can also buy level boosts. So you would get one for free when you buy the War Within, but if you wanted to, you can purchase more. Um, and then there's also some cosmetic stuff in here like mount packs and armor packs. None of this is required at all. At sort of the end game, you'll unlock mounts and all sorts of transmog, and in fact, that's its own sort of content pillar at the end as you play the game. And then the menu will allow you to um, go in and adjust the settings. I am going into the add-on section. We're going to talk about this further down the line in a later video. There are many third-party fan-created enhancements that you can add into the game called add-ons. Um, there'll be a whole separate video on that, but in this settings is where you turn them on and turn them off. For right now, we're just going to kind of go au natural. You can change your realm up at the top, and you can also pick campsites. You can unlock some different campsites as you play the game. So we're done with that. We've created our character, we picked our class, we picked our faction. We're looking good. So what we're going to do is we're going to click Enter World, and we're just going to start our adventure. And this is news to me, but it looks like it starts every character in a zone that's called Exile's Reach as a new player.
You are a soldier of the mighty Horde, a disparate band of races united in their pursuit of freedom, honor, and glory. A Horde expedition sent to explore an uncharted island has recently gone missing. As a bold new recruit, you have joined a rescue mission departing from Orgrimmar. Find the lost expedition members and bring them home. For the Horde!
For the Horde. Cool. So right when you begin, it's going to just hit you with some pretty straightforward new player tutorial stuff. So we'll just go over that with sort of what it is here. Position your hands and click OK. It's a computer game, so WASD and the spacebar, mouse and keyboard are the preferred layout. There are, I just mentioned them, we'll dive into them later. There are some add-ons that will allow you to rearrange everything on the screen and play with a controller. And there is controller support. So we'll talk about that a little bit further down the line and how to set that up if that's something you desire. But for right now, mouse and keyboard. So right click left and right to look around, WASD to walk around. A and D turn your camera, and S moves you backwards. So one of the first things that I recommend that you do is change the A and D keybinds. And I know we're already going into settings before we even started the game, but this is a pretty major one. So we'll talk about some early game setting changes to make that'll really make your life easier. So the reason that I recommend changing A and D is because you can see, one, they're slow. And so if you're walking and you want to turn left, you're kind of like, if you want to bang a Yui, you're really waiting on the turn to do his job. So the other way that you can turn is by rotating your camera. So that first prompt was to right click with your mouse, and when you right click and drag, your character turns. So now if I want to bang a Yui, I can do it almost instantly by simultaneously moving my mouse and pressing the W key. So that means we don't need A or D. So we're going to go into the settings by clicking the escape button. We're going to go into options, and then we're going to go to key bindings, movement keys, and we're going to rebind Q and E to A and D. So A was turn left, D was turn right, Q is strafe left, E is strafe right. We're just going to drop that down here. So we're going to go A and D. You can see turn left and turn right unbound themselves. So now we have strafe left and strafe right. We're going to click close and return to game, and right click to move our camera. And now when we press A or D, we actually just walk in that direction. So we walk left, we walk right. This is going to be really, really useful in everything that you do in this game. So I would get used to pressing W to move with your right click kind of held down to turn your camera. And then, of course, they haven't talked about it yet, but you can zoom out with mouse wheel out, and you can zoom in with mouse wheel in. You can go all the way into the first person, but nobody does that, so don't have to worry about that. So a couple things that you'll notice right here, it said to right click on the person in front of us with this big exclamation point. This symbol with its border, exclamation point with a border pointing sort of down towards the player, this is a main storyline campaign symbol. So whenever you see one of these, you know, like this is really the direction that I'm supposed to go. Whenever you see an exclamation point with nothing around it, that is just a quest, a side quest. So we're nearing the island where the Horde's last expedition was lost. We need to prepare for what's out there, warm up on these combat dummies. So we're going to click accept. This is a quest. We're going to click accept. And then we're going to attack the combat dummies. So we're going to just right click to start auto attacking. And then the system's going to guide you. Down here's our ability bar. There's not much on here yet, but one of them is an active ability called Sinister Strike that strikes for 4 damage. So we push that button. You can see over here on the right, quest complete. Return to the quest giver. So we turn around. There's the warlord. And we turn in the quest.
Throg will spar with you for now.
Throg wants to fight. Down here at the bottom, you'll see our experience bar. We're already almost at level 2. Pretty crazy. It goes quick. So new quests.
We will save the expedition.
He wants to fight. We click accept. A couple seconds, he's going to start hitting us. We still only have one ability, so we're just going to hit him with Sinister Strike. The Rogue is an interesting class to start with. There's actually, he's saying important things. You always want to be facing your enemy. You can see how I just turned there. When you're facing the other way, you don't attack, and I'm pretty sure they get a critical strike advantage from attacking your back. You also can't parry. And that is what it looks like when you level up. So we're now level 2. Down here, you can see these sort of orbs. These are my combo points. So the Rogue is a very simple builder spender class. Pretty much all the classes and specs in the game are builder spender now. You build up resources like combo points. You then spend those on different abilities to do damage. So I'm going to turn in the sparring quest. Gives me a little bit of silver and some copper. He's got another quest for me. And he said, do you hear that?
Warlord, this storm will soon overwhelm us.
Soldiers, brace yourselves.
Got dark quick. All right. Talk to the warlord. Hold on to something. Those are Murlocs. You may have heard of them. I'm sure we'll meet more of them throughout this island adventure here.
You survived. We need to regroup at once.
So we're going to talk to Warlord again. Oh, look, more Murlocs. The shore is littered with shipwrecks. This must be where the lost expedition crashed. We cannot begin our search until our soldiers are healed. Our medical supplies were stolen. Find the first aid kits that the Murlocs took. So this is Exile's Reach. This is essentially somewhat recently introduced new player experience. You can see there's a couple folks here, actually. So these blue names, not the green names, the blue names, these are players. So these are other Horde players. That's a goblin and that's an orc. So really cool to see that we're not just here alone. And the whole point of this island is basically just to introduce you to the game, how to complete basic quests and sort of work your way through here. One thing I seem to be missing is the mini map. I'm wondering if that unlocks later, but it's in the top right. Right now, the game wants me to open up my spell book. So down on the bottom right is a menu with all sorts of different options to open up different screens or panels. They also have hotkeys. So the hotkey for your spell book is P. It opens up this big one. You can see all the different abilities for your class as they level up. So the one we just got at level 2 was Eviscerate. I mentioned that the Rogue is a builder spender class, so we use Sinister Strike to award 1 combo point. We use Eviscerate to spend the combo point, or to spend multiple combo points to do big damage. Our mini map did show up. It's up here in the top right. Pretty straightforward. Your character is kind of in the middle of that mini map. You can hover over it to zoom in or zoom out. And the area where you should complete your quest is highlighted in this blue white circle. You can also open your main map by pushing M. Again, you can zoom in here and move around. That's also going to highlight your quests with that same sort of symbol for the main storyline. So we're going to just hop on over here. And when you mouse over an enemy, if it's part of a quest, it'll show down in the bottom right a tooltip that will tell you your progress of the quest. You'll also see your progress of the quest in the top right here. So we need to kill Murlocs to get medical packs. So we're going to hit them with Sinister Strike, and they die pretty quick. So you kill something, you can then right click to loot it. You can see here we have a little bit of copper and our first aid kit. The second setting that I recommend that you change is auto loot. So in options and then right under the controls, you can toggle on this auto loot. The way that it's designed out of the gate, you will just loot. You will open up a loot window, just like we did where we saw the copper and the first aid kit. And when you turn on auto loot, you just right click, it pops it up briefly, and then it puts it in your inventory. If you're really interested in sinking into the game and sort of familiarizing yourself with the stuff, which will get repetitive, you can keep the window open. That's totally fine. You can also, after you loot, you can open up your backpack with the B button, and that will show you what's in your inventory. So on that last Murloc, I looted a pair of leather boots. You can also click or hold shift to compare it to what you currently have. So we are currently have equipped the Rogue's footwear with 1 armor. We looted stitched leather boots. They also have 1 armor. But you'll see this blue text. You haven't collected this appearance. So when we equip this, it will bind it to you. And down in the bottom left in the chat box, it'll say stitched leather boots has been added to your appearance collection. So every piece of loot in this game has an appearance. Some of them are shared, some of them are not. And we'll talk about it later when we get to a major city, but you can customize your character's appearance regardless of the armor that you're currently wearing. So if you work really hard to unlock a cool, unique set, you can do that. You can transmogrify over your current armor appearance to wear that cool set all the time. So transmogrification, collecting those armor sets, is a popular part of the end game. There are certain folks that just love to collect, and they are out here collecting transmog appearances, mounts, pets, all sorts of stuff, toys, different things. So we're going to go back to our main quest. We're going to turn it in. We level up again. Welcome to level 3. Down in the bottom in the text box, it says we've learned cheap shot and stealth. So we'll go put those on our bar in a second. And then the quest, she wants us to use the first aid kits on Bo, Mithran, Dawn Tracker, and Lana. So we'll accept that. We'll hit P to open up our spell book, and now we're going to do a good amount of settings changes because Well, I'll tell you why in just a second. So we can drag stealth down to our bar, and we'll then add cheap shot down to our bar as well. So I'm gonna put stealth on the bar, and certain classes have what are called like stances essentially. So this is true with warrior, but it doesn't impact as much. Druids have different forms, so when they're a cat they can use certain things that they can't use when they're a bear. Rogues have a form called stealth. I'll push the button now. You'll see my character will go kind of translucent, and we are hidden from enemies. When you push that stealth button, you will go into stealth mode. Your action bar will change, and you will have access to certain abilities. So cheap shot says here requires stealth. So we're gonna push stealth. It's gonna change our action bar. I dragged the stealth icon to the new action bar in case I need to get out of stealth for any reason. And we're gonna drag cheap shot down to our action bar. And cheap shot simple ability, you open from stealth, but it stuns the target for 6 seconds and awards 1 combo point. So what we're going to do now is make some edits um, to the base UI just to align with something that I'm a little bit more familiar with and a little bit more comfortable with. But this will introduce you um, to the edit feature. So we click escape, and oh, it looks like we can't yet. So we won't be making any edits to the layout. We will be making some changes to the key binding. So under options, and then in key bindings, this is where we change strafe left and strafe right. We've actually freed up 2 buttons that are close to WASD. We freed up Q and we freed up E. So what I like to do is leverage those for my abilities, because you'll see down here the base recommendation is your number keys 1 through 9, actually 1 through 10, and then the minus and the equal sign, which are really far away from where your hands would be on the computer. So I like to change this up a little bit. I always make this joke in my guild. They always have this key binding conversation where they're like, this is the best or this is the best. And I used to raid with a guy who played the piano, and he had massive stretchable fingers, and he used to keep binding number 5. He said it was a great button. I think 5 is as far as I go, but what we're going to do here is we're going to turn on quick keybind mode, and that's going to allow us to highlight these buttons and change them to whatever we want. So the way that I like to do these, I'm just going to hit escape to kind of unbind these to go through it in a clean way. Because it's so close to my movement keys, I like to make my first key E, and then R, F, and Q, because these are 4 buttons that are right around where my left hand is. And then I go through the number keys again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I also like the tilde key. And then if you use a mouse that has a couple extra buttons, that's where I'll usually add those in. I use an MMO mouse, so it actually has 12 buttons on the side. You don't need that by any means, but you will have to kind of configure your key binding layout, because you can see here we started with just a few, but we're going to get a lot more. So I added F1 and F2 to the key binds there. Down at the bottom, you also see a couple other abilities that weren't in our main spell book. These are our racials that we mentioned before. So one of them, because I'm an undead, is Cannibalize. So when it's activated, I regenerate 7% of health and mana 2 seconds for 10 seconds. And I'm essentially eating a corpse. So I can't just do it. There's no nearby corpses to eat. Any movement or action taken while cannibalizing will cancel the effect. You don't really use this much. I might keep it on my bars just for kicks and giggles. And then we also have the active ability, Will of the Forsaken. So I mentioned gnomes can get out of snares, and dwarves can turn into stone and remove bleeds and poisons. But undead have Will of the Forsaken, which removes any charm, fear, and sleep effects. I think it still has some use in player versus player, but there's not many charm or sleep effects in PvE content anymore. And then the last one is an ability called Recuperate. This was just added 2 weeks ago, and it is basically put in the game for classes like Rogue that don't have any healing, or Hunter, or Warlock has some healing, but and it allows you to take a breather, prepare some food, and have a meal. Restores 50% of your max health over 10 seconds. So you don't need to like carry food around or bandages like you do in classic World of Warcraft anymore. So we're going to keep that one on there in case we get low on health. And then we'll continue along with the quest, and we're going to continue along until it allows us to open edit mode, because I want to change some more stuff here. So
Stay focused on
we'll give her back the first aid, and we're going to search the nearby camp for survivors. It instructs you to open the map. It says, hey, go this way. Cool. So we'll keep running. While I'm running, I am going to make one more change to a keybind. This default keybind is start auto or toggle auto run. It's set to the numlock key on your keyboard. I just like to change it to one of my mouse buttons, so I'm going to do that now. And what auto run does, it just, whatever direction you're facing, you run. So it's not like in the mobile MMOs that have like auto pathing or anything like that. This is just literally pointing you in a direction and running. So you still have to turn, you still have to do all that stuff. Looks like we got a couple more players up here. There's a warlock, and then there's a monk here, and he's got a chauffeur, basically a motorcycle that'll drive you around. I don't think the whole point of this was that this was disconnected from my main account, so I don't believe we have anything. Yeah, we have 2 boot appearances, we have 0 mounts, we have 0 pets, we have 0 toys, 0 heirlooms. I opened this window by holding shift and clicking P. Shows my campsites, but this is where you can go in and you can see all the different armor sets that you can acquire, and you can look at all the different mounts that you can acquire. You can see like where they come from. Still requires you to kind of go look it up most of the time, but you can see all that here. Like, this is a brand new fresh account, so we're starting from the beginning. So that quest, I turned that in, and they want me to go sort of restock the camp and get some food. So it says raw meat collected from the wildlife. We're gonna attack Sinister Strike twice, hit Eviscerate, loot. With this one, oh, sorry, they also gave me a bag. I'll talk about that in a second. But with this corpse, I also got a piece of what's called vendor trash. It's a gray item, so you can see here this name is white. We'll also see green items, blue items, purple items, sometimes orange items that are like legendaries. Gray items are trash that is built into the game to sell to a vendor. It is useless aside from selling it for 5 copper. So we're gonna keep going. We got some more meat. Here's this bird. Okay, he's kind of far away. I don't want to jump out to him, so we'll go this way. I will get a ranged attack eventually, but right now I don't have one. I'm just running into the woods because we can't jump up there. Here's another goat. That's some more meat. You can tell like the rotation, the buttons, like it's all pretty basic right now. I could, if I wanted to, like hit stealth and I could go up and cheap shot it. Gives me 1 combo point, but doesn't do a whole lot of damage. Here above the enemy's name, you can see some of the status effects, and that kill got us to level 4, which is great. We didn't get any new abilities at all, but we're leveling up. Every different expansion has like different level caps. So like vanilla World of Warcraft was like 1 to 60, and then they kept increasing it by, sorry, we just cooked the meat there and we're just turning it in. Gives us some tough jerky. We don't really need this anymore because we can recuperate. So That's just we're just gonna vendor that later.
Expedition has been found.
Enhanced combat tactics, speak to Grimax. We want to abilities proven against the warlord. So we're basically the sparring quest again.
You must be ready to face them in battle. Your next lesson.
So we'll fight here. E, Sinister Strike, build up combo points. And depending on what class you pick too, it's going to sort of run through this tutorial and teach you the basics about how to perform your class. So like here, it's like build up combo points. And it might still say that until I get, I don't know, 5. Use Eviscerate now after 3. And it wants me to do that a bunch, so do it with 4.
Sinister Strike as often as you can to gain combo points.
But if you decide to play a druid, it'll tell you how to play druid, or if you decide to play warrior, it'll talk to you about like the different sort of class mechanics as you go through this tutorial and give you sort of a base idea. So now we need to eviscerate with 4 combo points.
Eviscerate spends all of
Now it wants me to do it with 5.
Focus on getting 5 combo points before you try using Eviscerate.
It's a relatively slow start for Rogue. Not all the classes are like this. It's a funny way to say it, but like this is very similar to the gameplay experience that you might see throughout the lifetime of playing classic World of Warcraft. It's very, very simple, straightforward. And a relatively slower pace. As we level up and get closer to the level cap, we're going to get things that'll allow us to make our class like faster and more cohesive. So it does get a lot more fast paced. So put this one in, scout northward and find Mithran Dawn-Trekker.
We'll head north to see what the others have found.
I was talking a little bit about level caps earlier, so while we're walking, I'll talk about it some more. Every expansion increases level caps. Our current level cap, I believe, is level 80 in the War Within. In classic World of Warcraft, it went up to 60, and then TBC went up to 70, and then Wrath of the Lich King went up to 80, and then Miss Pandaria or Cataclysm it went up to 90, and Maba goes up to 100, or it just keeps going up and up and up, and then eventually they were like, hey, we're going to squish this back down. So at one expansion, we actually went back down to level 60, and everybody was like, okay, that's fine.
I saw no sign of her. She evaded capture.
One can hope.
They want us to go in and rescue a daughter from the Quillbore, so we're going to go in here. One thing that you'll probably notice about the enemies that we were fighting back here, like the Sharp-Beak Hawk, the name was Yellow. Yellow enemies will not attack you on sight. Red enemies will attack you on sight. So if we walk up too close to this, it's going to start attacking me. So this is one of the cool things about being a rogue is that I can now use stealth and the enemies won't see me. So you can see now I'm stealthed. I can go right up to this Geomancer and he's not going to see me at all. And then I can use Cheap Shot, or I could even just open up with a Sinister Strike if I wanted to start attacking. So we got 4 combo points. We'll hit him with an Eviscerate. And I didn't explain it, but the basic thing about combo points is that they do more damage, or they extend the duration of an ability depending on the amount of combo points that you have. So you can see Eviscerate. If you spend it with 1 combo point, it does 7 damage. 2, it does 14. So it basically doubles it per combo point. And so our quest here is basically kill Quillbore. And he accepted. So what I did there was I saw this blood elf, looks like he's a paladin, also killing these enemies. And because we're killing them so quickly, I just invited him to a group, because if you hit it, you will get credit for it. It's called tagging a mob. And when you further on later in the game, the enemies have more health, but because we're killing them so quickly, I wasn't getting tags on those mobs, so I invited him to the group and he joined, which is great. This here is a rare mob. It did have a little icon on the screen on the mini map to sort of designate it as a rare mob. So they'll typically drop a little bit extra in terms of like items and stuff. I think this one dropped something that's worth 5 silver, and he dropped a battered cloak. I just pressed shift and we're not actually wearing a cloak, so I'm going to equip this cloak to give us 1 more armor. You can see it just popped up on the back of our screen there. So our quest was to kill a bunch of Quillboar and then go kill Geolord Greco over here. So I'm going to stealth in, Sinister Strike, Eviscerate. And you can see him here. He just had a little bar above his head. That was a cast bar, so he cast a spell on that paladin. We'll talk about things like kicks and stuff. Looks like he was holding this guy hostage, so we saved the goblin. This is another icon here. So we've got Quillboar treasures up in the right. You can see a little treasure chest icon, and then we'll loot it. They're also outlined in purple. It gave me a handful of blood shards, which is worth 55 silver, which is great. We only have 17 silver, so we'll use that money. And then it gave us bracers, which I don't believe we have, so we're going to equip those. And then I'm also going to equip the stitch leather tunic because we don't have this appearance, and I want the appearances to make cool armor sets later.
Of course, you come to me.
So here's our first quest reward. That's a piece of loot, which is great. So here you can see that it is green instead of white or gray. It also has stats on it. So this has agility and stamina. Those are just the base stats. You can see that it also would switch over to intellect. It just allows some flexibility. If I was a druid who also wears leather armor, when a druid equips this, it would have intellect and stamina depending on the specialization that they're in. So we're just going to click complete quest. We got the boots. They're in our inventory. We're going to equip those because we want that agility. It's going to make our attacks do more damage alongside leveling up. So we'll turn in the second quest with Cork as well. And then goblins are notorious for having sort of their engineering backgrounds along with gnomes. So whenever you do quests for goblins, it usually involves something ridiculous like a motorcycle or a helicopter. You can see up ahead there's like a ton of mobs. We're basically doing a little recon mission here. So we're going to walk up to this helicopter, right click it, which will allow us to jump in. And then this is going to fly us around to survey the area.
If it has a camera, then why does someone need to be up there?
I need a backup plan in case your recruit gets dropped like a rock. Is this thing still on? Hey, pal! You accepted all liability by agreeing to this.
Be quiet. I see something.
We will take your soul and raise the dragon from the dead.
Cowards! Soon you will face the full might of the Horde!
Ha! Our dragon will crush them. We have other rituals to oversee. Savor the final moments of your life.
They're bringing a dragon back from the dead? Is it too late for us to run?
We do not run when our people need us. Find us a way through all of those undead.
Hey, you say jump, I provide the rocket boots. How about a giant boar?
Whatever you do, make it quick. My daughter's life is at stake.
And we're just moving along with the story here. So we're going to turn this quest in with the info.
I'll be seeing you later. Well, I promised to jump.
I mentioned the helicopters and the motorcycles, but the goblins also love to have us test things on animals or enemies or creatures. Not always animals. They're not like that, but this quest does. So we're just calibrating this. And again, this, these are just quests in the starting zone, really to familiarize you with different gameplay mechanics, like doing different quests. This is a quest item, so they gave us this resizer to go test. It's in our inventory. You can also click this button on the right or above the mob, it'll have that icon that says you're going to test this or use this item. So we're going to head back here. I'm going to make one other brief settings change. It's about the camera. You'll notice like when I move the camera or when I start moving, it'll reset the camera back behind my character. I don't really like that. I like to be able to move my camera freely. So I'm going to go into options and I'm going to search camera. Only when moving. I'm going to say never adjust camera. Again, personal preference. I also forgot we got a new ability, so I'm going to add sprint down to my toolbar. Sprint, simple ability for rogues, 2-minute cooldown, increased movement speed 70% for 8 seconds.
We won't rest until the
Turn this quest in.
Ready to make some gold? When you blow up those zombies,
and now they want me to use that thing we just tested on the guys down here, so we're just going to start swinging. And the quest objective says monstrous cadavers slain, so we're really aiming for these big guys, not the little guys. And that's the last one. So this thing's going to bring us down. We also leveled up. We got a new spell. It's called Kick. Once this thing stops malfunctioning, we'll talk about what Kick does.
Mother, I failed.
We'll drag it onto our bar.
Hang on, shooter. Recruit with me. Loktar Ogar.
And we got to go kill this guy who's holding the daughter hostage. So kick is what's called an interrupt or a kick. It came from this ability. So it's a 15-second cooldown, a quick kick that interrupts spell casting and prevents any spell in that cool from being cast for 3 seconds. So previously, when that mob was casting an ability, we could interrupt that. And I think that this should be a kickable cast. I'm not really sure why it's not, especially because we just got kicked. But what is kickable and what's not kickable, you'll be able to see. It'll be yellow on the cast bar if it is kickable. So looks like this guy doesn't cast any of those, but I'll point out the next one. We also just looted another bag. So we looted a bag from the first aid quest, and we just got another one, and it will automatically put those into bag slots down here. Unlike Classic WoW, I think you're lucky you get one 6-slot bag right away, but the new
tell me what's happened here.
Player experience actually loads you up with a couple different bags. So
I will do whatever.
We're gonna keep going here. We got another green item.
The ogres are using necromancy to raise a dragon from the dead. They need sacrifices like us to fuel their magic. They're about to start a ritual that will... It's already begun. They're going to use the life force they've gathered to reanimate the dragon. Then we must take action. Remember that when we band together, the Horde can conquer any challenge. We will bring an end to these rituals before the ogres can complete them. Loktar Ogar!
Cool. Stop the ogres, stop the dragon. That's why we're on this island. Aside from the shipwreck. And eventually we'll get them out. We won't always be walking. We'll probably have them relatively quick.
Together,
so
we can put an
I did during that quest, we got a green weapon. So it's a dagger with stamina. If you open your your character panel with C, it'll actually show you all your different gear. So you can see the cloak that we equipped, the bracers, and it's telling us to drag this dagger over here. Looking at our old dagger, the worn dagger, it actually is a pretty sizable DPS increase. The old dagger did 1 damage, and this one does 1 to 3 or 1.1 damage per second and has 2 stamina. Looks like they're going to give us another bag if we do this quest, which is part of the main story, which is great. So we're just going to... this is teaching us how to use vendors. So the quest is basically any item purchased from the provisioner and any item sold to the vendor. So you can see here the gray items actually have a little gold icon here. You can click this button that says sell all junk items that will just sell everything there. One of those was our handful of blood shards. So that's going to give us a sizable chunk of money. So we're going to click yes. And then white gear is useless after you've replaced it. So I'm going to right click this one, this one, this one, and this one as well. I don't need the food because we have recuperate. So just selling all my stuff. We now have 1 gold, 12 silver, which is great. And then the quest wants us to purchase. So we're going to buy this word tabard. That gives us an achievement. So we can talk about achievements next. I'm going to equip the tabard. But the achievement was called Represent, and it is from collecting a tabard slot appearance. Achievements can be accessed by pushing the Y button on your keyboard, and there's achievements for all different parts of the game. You can see here just equipping stuff, doing quests, exploration, delves, PvP, dungeons and raids, professions. So if you're a collector, that can be another thing you can collect. You can collect achievements. Some of them are what are called feats of strength or legacy achievements, and not all of those are achievable anymore. But everything sort of top of the shelf there, you can work towards to collect achievement points. Achievement points don't do anything. You don't get anything for having a ton of achievement points. There are certain breakpoints for things like collecting so many mounts or so many toys. If you collect enough mounts, you'll get mounts. As a reward, you can also get titles as well from certain achievements. So we're just collecting quests now. We had a quest there. We had a quest from Lana to go this way, and then there's a quest over here. So I'm just going to do this one because they're in opposite directions. So I accepted that one from Lana to go into this spooky cave. It's probably pronounced Lana.
I think we found the ritual.
So it looks like there's a ritual going on in here. So I'll complete this. I leveled up. I got a new ability. We'll talk about it. And we'll accept the quest to rescue 5 trapped expedition members in the pit. The ability I got is Ambush. So this requires stealth, ambush the target, causing 72 physical damage and awards 2 combo points. So unlike Sinister Strike that just does 8 physical damage, Ambush is a big damage spell. Can only be used from stealth and awards 2 combo points. So that is going to be our main opener. And it now gives us a reason to go into stealth before we start combat. So we're going to start walking down into this pit. And we can see these cocoons. Usually if there's quest items, they'll be highlighted in some capacity to sort of draw attention, just like that cocoon was. Important things will always typically be highlighted or have an icon. You can see here, we can actually navigate to the specific cocoons on the map, the mini map up in the top right. So you can see these cocoons are actually lower. They're down. They have a little down arrow. And then as you approach, the down arrow will go away. I think somebody just came in here. Normally, I think there's spiders that you have to fight, but it looks like these folks were just down in here. Here's a druid. So we're going to destroy that one and keep going through the spooky cave. Exile's Reach, like I said, it was a new player experience that was developed specifically to help new players get accustomed to the game. So there's not really any specific lore that's sort of tied to this. These are characters that were introduced just to guide the new player experience. So we're going to stealth here. It looks like this warlock is attacking. We'll hit ambush. We got our 2 combo points, 3 combo points. We'll hit eviscerate.
Thank you, friend.
Yeah, we saved Brenna. Oh, and she's a druid. She's gonna let us ride on her back and get out of this spooky cave. You'll also notice, I don't really actually know how this happened, but our gear is broken. So gear has durability on it that goes down throughout combat at a slow rate, but also when you die, it's just kind of a little money sink to have a penalty for dying, I guess. We didn't die, so I'm not really sure where this one came from, but we're going to repair our armor. And maybe that's the whole point. Maybe because it's the new player experience, they break your armor so that they force you to go repair it.
You did good saving the survivors and killing the spiders.
Those spiders had their rightful home destroyed.
So I'll report back to the war leaders.
Well, if you be putting it that way.
Run down here.
You have a problem with spiders,
Back in.
Lanza?
We got green bracers. Is great. You will quickly, by the time we're done with this, you will essentially replace all of your white gear with green gear. So we're gonna just equip those bracers, and yep, it looks like it was part of it. So your gear is nearly destroyed from your last fight. Speak with the provisioner to repair it right away. Click accept.
Danger surrounds us.
Go talk to the provisioner.
Hello.
Vendors that can repair will have a little anvil icon over them, where vendors that just sell stuff will have a little pouch or a bag. So this button over here, I'm surprised the game isn't telling us, is repair all items or repair an individual item. I don't know why repair an individual item exists. You never push it. You just want to repair all your gear always. So this looks like it's a rogue specific quest. It says first expedition rogue found. So we're going to go that way because I want whatever he's got. Poison. That's good. Learn about poisons. As we're headed over here, you'll see this is a side quest. So this is a quest that doesn't have that border around it. So this is just a side quest. It is to kill this bear. And this is a group side quest. It says suggested players 3, defeat Killclaw the Terrible. I'm going to accept this because it gives shoulders. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it because I'm a rogue, but we'll see. The bear also looked really cool, so I want to go show you guys that. So it looks like we're looking for this ghost here. You got the look of a rogue. There's a powerful ogre out there that captured part of the first. How do I make this poison? Get 3 withering hemlocks. Make sure the giant bear isn't looking. Oh, it looks like the warlock is attacking it. So we're going to sprint over there. We're going to try and tag this mob. And we got it. We got super lucky. That's awesome. So I'm just going to hit him with a /thanks. Warlocks are cool. Like I said, they get pets. So that was an example of a warlock's pet. It's called a Void Walker. Some people call it the Blueberry. Basically, the whole point of this was like, hey, there's a big bear over here that's scary. You're a rogue. You need to collect poison ingredients. So what they wanted you to do was stealth or find a group of players nearby to kill that. Because that warlock had that Void Walker, it is a pet that is designed to tank. And he was casting Health Funnel on it, which restores the health. So warlocks have the ability to kind of take on a little bit more than they can bite off more than they can chew, because they can have their pets do certain things like tank or dispel magic or interrupt for them. So we're going to go over here for this rogue quest. Oh, sorry. This is the bear quest. He's back. We're going to turn it in, get those shoulders, which is great. We didn't have shoulders. That slot was empty. So that's a big boost for us. It's 3 armor, 2 agility, 3 stamina, and our first secondary stat plus 3 haste. So talk about that. Looks like the warlock got in a fight with the bear again. We're just going to let him run away. We'll talk about tethering as well as secondary stats. So we turn in the quest. We get poison. We unlocked a feature. Okay, we got a lot to talk about. So most of the time when you level up and you get an ability, you just get it. Like you can see here, we leveled up and we got Crimson Vial. But because we completed that quest, we also got access to poisons. I'm just going to accept this and start heading in that direction. Poisons are part of the rogue toolkit. You can see down here, added it to our slots here. So instant poison is the first poison that we get. It coats our weapons with lethal poison that lasts for 1 hour. Each strike has a 30% chance of poisoning the enemy, which instantly inflicts 3 nature damage. And then we also got Crimson Vial. So Crimson Vial, 30-second cooldown. This is just a way for us to heal a little bit because rogues don't have a lot in the healing department. Heals you for 20% of your max health over 4 seconds. Looks like this monk is just going for it. He's level 10, so he's a little bit higher, but I'm going to try and help him out and just do some damage. So this is definitely a more advanced mob than what we were fighting earlier. You could see it just did a charge across. So you definitely want to be on the lookout for that. And then I also mentioned we should talk about the concept of tethering. So basically, monsters exist in the world, or mobs, or enemies. And when you run by them, they'll attack you, they'll chase you. At a certain point, if you keep running, just like that warlock did, and you don't die, you'll get away from that monster, and it will tether back to its specific pathing location. So it'll basically come back to its cave. Looks like our enemy here is coming on down. So we cast instant poison. We're going into stealth. And we're just going to attack this guy to complete our quest here. And a couple combo points. Cast Eviscerate. Kill the guy. There was one other thing that we were going to talk about in there, but I don't remember exactly what it was. So we'll have to, hopefully it'll come back to me at a certain point. But we're going to go back in, turn in this quest. Most of the abilities you'll just kind of learn. You don't really need to go to trainers anymore like you would do in Classic WoW or anything like that. So we did the side quests. We did all the group quests in the area. Typically, before you can progress further, you need to complete all the group quests in an area, or the campaign quests. What you typically want to do here is, if possible, group them all together. But because one quest had me go that way, another quest had me go that way, I just did those, and now we're going to go this way. Normally, when you're out in the world, after you get off this starter island, you will go to like different quest hubs or like small towns or cities or camps, and you'll do a bunch of quests in that area, come back, turn them all in, stuff like that. So
they seem to have captured a forsaken prisoner for their ritual. An alert mind.
We're going to talk to Bo.
Strong mind.
Turn in the quest. Pick up the other quests.
Take care of
Looks like we get some more loot.
Elements guide you.
And we can see down here on the map, there's actually a side quest. So I'm just going to go take a peek at what it is. Looks like there's a light spawn. Seems to be in trouble. Use the light spawn's light to dispel nearby necrotic energy. The following will be cast on you. Light speed. Light spawn blesses you, granting 60% speed boost for 10 minutes. That's huge. Because we don't have a mount. So we'll get a mount, but I don't think we get it until after Starter Island. So this will just make us faster for the Starter Islands. And I guess I would recommend you do this quest real quick. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself.
Free me so I might recover and pass some of my power to you.
Whoa.
The spell is weakening. The light returns to me. Freedom.
Cool.
You have my gratitude.
Turn that in, get the buff. Now we're zooming. You can see this little light trail. This is not a common thing. This is just unique to the starter island. I think it's probably to help speed things along for totally new players. So we're going to go back to this little questing area. Looks like we got 3 objectives. We need to just burn the harpy totems. We need to kill 10 harpies and cohorts. And we need to rescue Herbert Gloomburst. So coming up on a harpy. If you've ever played like Hearthstone or like any of the other sort of like Warcraft IPs, like you might recognize some of these common enemies. Like we started off with Murlocs, and then we fought Quillboars, and now we're fighting Harpies. And I mean, there were some spiders down there too, but we didn't really see any while we were doing that quest. This Harpy had some extra little stuff. We haven't gotten an AoE ability yet, an area of effect ability. So all of our abilities are single target. And you can see here, the Ogre Taskmaster is like a rare mob. It's got an icon on the map. So I want to kill him because he might have some loot. We're going to stealth, ambush, and eviscerate. Normally, when you have a lot faster gameplay, you'll be spending your combo points at 5, but because these mobs are a little low on health, I'm spending them at like 3 or 4. That guy had a bag, so we're doing really good on bag space now. We've got our backpack that we started with and 4 other bags. What I like to do, and we'll talk about it in add-ons too, is I like to go into the settings and turn on combined bags. Because I find it a little bit annoying to like work through all the individual bags. This just combines them all into one combined backpack so you can see all your stuff. So we did that. I just aggroed. Aggroing is when you walk by something and you get its attention. And it comes and attacks you. I'm going to stealth to kill this harpy. And break this. And we can see our little guy over here. I noticed I was looking up the mini map and I saw that's where an icon was to complete the quest. We got ambushed. Who would have guessed? One of the other major differences specific to Rogue between Classic and Retail is combo points. In Classic, we good? Okay. In Classic, your combo points are tied to the thing that you're attacking. In Retail, they're tied to your character. So you can build combo points on one mob. They'll be tied to you. You can spend it on another. So just one of the major quality of life improvements that they made. Looks like our team members are coming to help us, which is... Well, they're not helping us. They're helping him. And hopefully they're going to get him down. Looks like we're killing him a little bit too fast, so that's fine. Kill this guy off. Oh, now they're helping me. Thanks, guys. Hopefully that was the last batch.
Something big is coming this way.
Of course it's not. I'm going to stealth for this one. A big mob. It'd be cool if this one tested us just a little bit. I mean, it is taking down our health, so at any point we can really pop this Crimson Vial and we'll drink it. And we'll start regaining health.
Let's make ourselves scarce, shall we?
Oh, scared me, Herbert. So we did all the quests in this area. I did pass by some stolen treasure, so I'm not a completionist, but I'm like a little bit of a completionist. So I'm just gonna go grab this real quick, especially because we're starting out. Like everything is good for us. So. Cool. This is a good intro into another topic. I didn't see those, so I'm just going to stealth real quick. And we're going to walk towards the exit. I think it's over this way. So in that, we got some gray stuff that's worth 1 gold, which is awesome. We need gold right now. Looks like we got a frayed robe of an appearance we haven't collected. Since we've last looked in here, we got some pants too. So I'm just going to put these on to collect the appearances, and we'll sell that to a vendor. The other thing that we got here was an expedition healing potion. So it's an RPG, got to have healing potions. You will use healing potions at max level. They'll be obviously a lot stronger than they are now, but what we'll do when we add in some more keybinds is we'll definitely put those on there.
Stay ready.
So we're just turning in more stuff. We got to level 9.
Maintain
We're getting
your
really
balance.
close to like the next major thing that we get, which is talent points. We got a belt, 2 agi, 3 stamina, and that reminded me what I was going to talk about earlier. I was talking about secondary stats. So we got these shoulders, and these shoulders have haste. There are main stats or primary stats, which are up here: attributes, agility, stamina, and armor. Your class really depends your spec really depends your primary stat. So agility for rogue increases the magnitude of your attacks and abilities. So when you're looking for gear, which during the starter island, it's going to feed us gear that we need, you're looking for agility, and you're looking for leather because leather is what we wear. Druids wear leather, monks wear leather, other classes wear cloth armor. Cloth armor has less total armor, so it's weaker against physical attacks. And then above leather is mail armor, which is worn by shamans, hunters, evokers. And then above that is plate armor. That's for your death knights, your warriors, your paladins. Secondary stats are down here. They're labeled as enhancements, but everybody calls them secondary stats. We can see we have 2. We have critical strike, which is basically the chance for us to deal double damage, and then haste. Haste increases attack speed and energy regeneration. That is specific to rogue, and the other secondary stats will have specific effects on different classes. So rogue has combo points, which we've talked about, but there's also this little yellow bar down here. This is our energy. Our energy is what Sinister Strike costs. So 1 Sinister Strike costs 45 energy. We have 100 total energy, and it regenerates over time. The green bar is health. That one's pretty self-explanatory, but the resources for every class and every spec can differentiate. So for rogue, it's energy and it's combo points. Those are the fundamental things with rogue. For a lot of the healer classes, they'll have mana. For paladins, they'll have holy power, and they also have mana. For warriors, they have fury. For feral druid, they have energy because they're very much like a rogue. But for moonkin, or balanced druid, they have what's called astral power. So everything has its own sort of power system that helps add to the flavor of it, a flavor of the class.
The Horde has endured worse than this.
We're going to collect these pants, meet Warlord Grimax outside of Dark Maul Citadel. Pants have our primary stat and our stamina. I forgot about stamina. Stamina increases health. Pretty straightforward. Health is good. Allows us to absorb some more damage. You can see most of this stuff just has sort of the primary stat, agility and stamina. So agility is going to make us do more damage, and stamina is going to give us more health. Armor is a base stat on gear. The higher level the gear, the more armor you get. Armor reduces physical damage taken. We'll talk about more secondaries as we get them. We're going to turn in this quest. Transform into an ogre, scout the nearby citadel. All right, Herbert, fire away.
A willing test subject.
And we're getting towards the end of the starter islands area, so that's where our video will end today, or at least our VOD will end today. We might break this down into a couple different videos or shorts. But we'll get us through sort of the new player starting experience, and then next time I'm on, we will we'll go from there. So the concept here, because I've been blabbering so much, is turn into an ogre. These are my prisoners.
Keep moving. See if we can learn anything about the ritual.
And we'll sort of sneak through here. One of the things that isn't like super clear, that I just like been playing the game for so long, so like it makes sense, like we understand. the quests will tell you like what you need to do. So, but if you aren't paying attention to them a little bit, like you might not have known that you need, like, you're turning into an ogre and you need to go in here. So if you're ever stuck, just read the quest text, look at the mini map, take a look in your inventory or see if there's any icons for items. That'll help you get through that quest. And then this one has a /wave because we're trying to blend in here.
To the back. We'll seal them with the ward stones like we did their leader.
They did a pretty good job at kind of like going over all the different things that you'll experience throughout the game here. There are some new things like abilities that maybe they don't go over super well. I wish they did have like a kick tutorial. Looks like we just found the last member of our war party here, so we're gonna complete this and we're gonna free this guy. So now that we're all the way in the back of the camp, they want me to go in and start waging war. Unfortunately, it's been 10 minutes and I lost my speed buff, so we will have to hoof it. Good conversation point for this part of the video. But actually, before we dive in, I just want to take a look. So I got Slice and Dice. This is another finishing move that grants us increase attack speed by 50%, lasts longer per combo point. So the combo points don't necessarily make it more potent, but they make it last longer, which is good. But this is what's called a buff. So we've had a couple buffs already. We applied that instant poison, said it lasted for an hour. We got that speed buff from the light spawn at the beginning. That lasted for 10 minutes. So buffs, you can see up in the top right of your screen, you can see this instant poison is still active here. Basically everything up here will be tracked. So like right now, well, maybe not right now, but I can hit sprint and you can see that buff is being tracked. This warlock killed it so quick, which is a bummer, but whatever. We'll keep destroying catapults and we need to kill some ogres too. So we just want to tag that beforehand. I could invite him to a group, but I see a treasure chest over here, so I'm just going to completion it. And what we're waiting for really is these specific ogres to respawn. So respawn it. So basically, you'll kill an enemy, you'll kill a mob, and it'll die because you killed it. And there'll be a set amount of time before it respawns again. This is similar to, you know, all the other MMOs out there, but kind of annoying when somebody comes in and just like one shots it. That's why grouping up is good. Sometimes you'll find yourself waiting. And you'll know if something's up or not because like you can see these little icons. So you can see an icon on the map. It's yellow most of the time. So we're going to hit this guy. Most of the time they respawn pretty quick. This time I hit Slice and Dice just to attack, melee attack faster. You can see that buff up here. This stuff dies so quick, it's probably not worth keeping this buff up at all, but it's probably better just to spend our combo points to kill the enemies, but we can keep it up. I didn't know he was going to pull with these tamed boars. I probably wouldn't have pulled him if I'd known that. Drink my Crimson Vial. And this guy's back up here. We can see the white dot with the little up arrow indicating we need to go vertically. This Ogre Chef too. Looks like that guy's a little further up. So boom. Slice and Dice. Gets us attacking a little bit faster. Bam, bam, bam. And we'll sprint now because we want to go kill this guy before somebody else does. And he killed him. So we'll go back down. Another one spawns over in this corner, so we'll kill nearby mobs. Stealth. Ambush. One other thing about stealth, just a core concept of the game, is some enemies can see through stealth. We haven't run into any of those yet, but they will be indicated by having a small blue eye above their character when you're in stealth. So just something to look out for. Kind of similar to how this guy has these little Z's, like he's clearly asleep, so you can actually get closer if you weren't stealth to these enemies. Looks like this guy is kind of like a warrior, so I still haven't been able to demonstrate kick. But that is a good example of like an ability, an active ability being cast. You saw that little blue circle come around the character. The telegraphing in World of Warcraft retail has gotten a lot better after recent years. This past release really updated a lot of stuff about the game. So we're gonna go kill this other named one, and we'll look for any ability telegraphing in this one as well as some examples. He enraged. So enrage is a status effect. We killed it too fast to really see, but you could see that like he grew bigger and he was red, and then down in our target panel, you can actually see the buffs of other enemies. So I saw a little enrage buff. We'll talk about that more later. Now this guy's labeled as a shadow caster, but my hope is that he casts an ability that we can kick, and here it is, Shadow Bolt. You see it's yellow, and I press the kick button and it says interrupted. So that's going to come into play a lot in dungeon and PvE, and actually in all forms of content in the end game. And that guy just died real quick. So we're going to go over to these guys. We need to kill 3 more ogres.
Stop awakening!
1 more ogre. I'm not seeing any, so I'm actually going to try and go back upstairs and see if we can get any on the way back to our quest. Seeing it. Oh, there we go. Stealth, ambush, viscerate, or sinister strike, viscerate. Could have kicked, but we killed it. So we got all our quests done. We're going to go back. If you don't see any of the blue on your screen, you can look for these arrows, this gold arrows kind of pointing us in the right direction. This arrow here above our character is also pointing us to a waypoint, which is where we want to go. You can open your map and you can see this specific one is colored in while these aren't. If you click on a different one, that'll show you on the map where you're going, where you need to go to turn that in.
Interested in some experimentation?
Level 10, Fast and Furious. Learn the Journeyman riding skill. That's awesome. This is what the skill that you would need to ride a mount. The other part of that puzzle is the mount, so we'll see if that comes into play here. And then we also hit level 10, which is great. So I'm just opening my inventory. I got a pair of gloves that I'm going to equip because they're green. I got a cloak appearance that I want, I'm sure. Just checking everything else. We also got 2 rusty hatchets. I'm wondering if those are rewards because we hit level 10, which I'll talk about in a second. So I'm going to learn this one too because I want to have it. Get that rusty hatchet appearance. And then we're going to use these waystones that we collected from the ogres. Let him down.
You have my thanks, but we must still end the ogre's ritual. Greetings. Be careful. Goodbye.
So the last part of the island is completing a dungeon. So this is Dungeon Darkmaul Citadel. This dungeon only exists here on the starter isle. You'll never do this dungeon again unless you start a new character from scratch. It's going to direct you to open the group finder. The hotkey for this is I. and it's going to show you how to use the group finder. So this is another controversial thing between classic and retail. The group finder essentially allows you to find and coordinate groups for group content. We'll go through the finer points once we get out of this tutorial. For right now, we're just going to click on Dark Maul Citadel and find group. And it's going to put us into this little queue, and down in the bottom right, it'll show you how long the expected time is to take and how long you've been in the queue. And then it's going to, when it's ready, it's going to pop up. A group has been formed for Dark Maul Citadel. Hit enter. And I believe in the starter island, they do try and pair you. So like, this is a real player. This is Doomthrax. He's a new player. What's up, Doomthrax? He's a blood elf priest, and he's a healer. If you do this and there's nobody else that's able to queue up, it'll just pair you with like just yourself and these NPCs. And these NPCs all embody different roles. So because we have a healer, he's the healer and he's here to heal. It looks like Shuja Grimax is a shaman, so she probably does some healing. And then looks like Warlord Brekka might be our tank in this. We're basically just going through, we're at DPS, so what we're trying to do in a dungeon is we're trying to do damage, and we're trying to reduce damage where applicable. So things like spells that enemies or mobs will cast that can be kicked, we want to try and kick them. And you'll learn at the higher level, there's a little bit of nuance to this. You might want to kick certain spells and not kick others, or some are not dangerous enough. You can let them go. You will have a number of kicks depending on your group. Some classes don't have kicks. Most classes do. Priest is the only one. For Holy and for Discipline, that does not have one. You'll also see like some other abilities. So like this hack ability, it's not kickable. It's not that yellow color. That would be important if you were playing a tank role, along with like that big knee kick. Usually abilities like that indicate, hey, big damage is coming on that person. So a tank would have to shield block if they were a warrior, or if they would take the damage and then heal it back up if they were a Death Knight, or they would stagger it if they were a Brewmaster. So these guys, they're just doing melee stuff to the tank. So we're just kind of doing our best to do damage, even slice and dice up, building combo points, hitting Eviscerate. We also got some new abilities while I wasn't looking. We got another poison, so now we have crippling poison. Rogues can have 2 poisons. They can have 1 damage dealing poison, and they can have 1 like additional effect. So crippling poison makes them slower. This gets us a little bit more into like, this is our first boss fight. So it's Tunk. Tunk is casting some abilities. So the first ability that he did was a frontal slam. So you don't want to stand in front of that where the tank is. Tanks usually try to point mobs away. So seismic slam, you can see, boom, it goes out and extends. It actually knocked Dom up. So now he's got to heal himself. Whereas I was fine over here behind. It's also casting Interrupting Shout. All the abilities do different things. Interrupting Shout is pretty self-explanatory. If you're casting a spell, it's going to interrupt you. We looted Tunk's Trunk, which is another bag. We're full on bags, so we're going to get rid of one of our smaller bags, which is great. Interrupting Shout, it will stop your spell casting, and then it looks like it did a little bit of area damage that the healer should heal up. Sometimes you'll have what's called a gauntlet. Looks like they went in and interrupted right away, but he was kind of casting, and basically like you want to, in some gauntlets, you want to run to the end, or you want to go and stop a cast before it has a big like negative impact. You can see here, I guess these would be like mini gauntlets because it's not really affecting us, but if we sprint up, looks like we engaged him in combat and he stopped casting. They don't really do gauntlets anymore in dungeons. Some of the old dungeons do have them. You just kick that mind flay. Looks like Domthrak actually came in and feared those wolves away. We'll talk more about crowd control at a later date. Everybody's coming up here. And this is the hubbub. This is the ogres trying to resurrect the undead dragon. So Gorgoth Ritual Thwarted is going to be our final boss fight. Starts off with some corpses that we're just hitting, building up combo points on these little mobs. And now he's available. So I'm going to just hit Slice and Dice. Probably not necessary. He'll die pretty quick. Interrupt Shadow Bolt. And the stakes are really low here, right? This is a starter island. You could let all of these casts go off. You could get hit by everything and you'd probably still be fine. But it's all good practice for later. A tiny little bit of nuance, although it's not always necessarily. Ooh, sacrificed himself to put his soul into the dragon. When it comes to kicking, you can try and kick a little bit later in the cast. When you're in a pickup group or a pug with just random players like Dom over here, I recommend kicking, you know, when you feel comfortable. Sometimes you can overrate kicks. Looks like we're getting a dragon's breath here. So breath moves from dragons tend to be frontals. So we don't want to stand in front. Wing buffet, that's going to be wings. There it is. It comes from the side. Dragons tend to have abilities that really speak to their body. So breaths come out of the front. Wings typically impact the side. And tail swipes will hit people on the back side of the boss. Let's see. Looks like it's just a general all-around AoE. And we're just slowly chipping away. You also see there, he targeted me before Necrotic Breath. So some boss abilities or mob abilities, you know, they'll target specific players. Sometimes they'll target just the tank. And we just finished our first dungeon. We got our first blue piece, which is a cloak. That's awesome. So the cloak has some more secondary stats, which is great. It's got agility, it's got stamina, that's got haste and versatility. So we're going to equip that because that's stats and it looks kind of cool. And then we're going to talk to get out of the Citadel, figure out how to get back home.
Horde reinforcements. I knew they would find us.
Sweet. Looks like we got a ride.
We've been trying to push our way past the storm.
Together, we can.
We got the last piece of loot here. Gonna get a helmet. Ride a wyvern back to Orgrimmar. Gonna hit accept. With that helmet. We're looking pretty roguey. We're looking pretty horde-y. Cool. So we're gonna click on this wyvern. And we're gonna head on out. And that's the starter island, Exile's Reach. We also today talked about different races, different classes, core concept of racial abilities, stats, inventory, a little bit of the settings. So I'm gonna fly on over to Orgrimmar, and that's where we'll end for today.
An impressive display of the Horde's strength.
Looks like we're really close to level 11. So level 10 unlocks talents, which is great. We'll talk about talents in the next video when we get to Orgrimmar and we start sort of setting up a couple more things. We'll talk about edit mode to make our UI a little bit more customizable, a little bit more user-friendly. We'll talk about talents and different specializations and talent points. And then we'll get into like leveling to get to cap. So our first goal is leveling up as quick as we can, while learning, because it's a new player experience. Here you can actually see we're traveling and we're going through. This is the map of Azeroth as it exists today with all the different expansions.
bulwark of the mighty Horde. Standing as a symbol of pride and resilience, it is here that its citizens gather to barter goods and muster their strength. Their longtime rival, the Imperious Alliance, poses a relentless threat. But no foe can hope to stand against the fearless soldiers of the Horde. The undead Forsaken may be shunned by the living, but your people strive to rise above the ruins of the past and forge a new future. Azeroth faces countless threats. Bold heroes are needed to rise up and defend her. For the Horde!
Yo, my guy looks sick as hell. Are you kidding me? This is how you end as a rogue in the starter zone? My helmet's a little big, and my weapons are dinky, but. All right, just going to turn in this one. Looks like it gives us a chess piece, an achievement for completing Exile's Reach, and meet with Court Fizzleplop at the city gate.
Danger, sir. I must report to the war chief.
Just going to equip that chess piece. So welcome to Orgrimmar. Like I mentioned earlier, everybody with a green name is an NPC. Everybody with a blue name, at least as it's configured now, is a player. So this guy on this big dinosaur is a player. We'll turn in this quest to Cork. Oh, we get a mount. Let's go. We're off to a great start. So finding your way. Orgrimmar is a big city, way too big to explore on foot. Range for you to receive a mount to help you get around. Speak with Rohaka at the stables. But I can't seem to remember the way there. Don't worry, Oatmeal. All we have to do is ask a guard for directions. If you ever need help finding something in the city, guards will show you where to go. So I'll just show you that. It's like this guy is just gonna ride his motorcycle there. But any of the cities, the player cities, will have guards, and guards have this whole list of things that you can look for. It wants us to go to the stable master, so it's highlighted with quests, but you can find transmog, auction house, bank, barber, class trainers, flight masters, guild masters. We'll talk about all these further along, what they all do. But she gives us directions, and I'm pretty sure this guy gives us a ride, so we can go get our mount. Welcome to Orgrimmar. Orgrimmar has had many faces over the past couple of years. This is its current iteration. It's pretty big, pretty bustling. It's actually super busy on Area 52, which is cool. It's cool to see that.
Anyone who's anyone does business here. Yeah, it's hot and dusty, and the orcs ain't always hospitable, but it's got charm, huh?
Well, something that you can't see because my little yogurt dude is blocking, it's the chat window. So down in the bottom left, you'll start with the chat window, and I'm just going to
see, the thing about Orgrimmar is
drag it around real quick.
Our own, and that means a lot to people. If the goons in the Alliance had their way, we wouldn't even have that much.
And actually, it looks like I can't move it because edit mode isn't available. It'll probably be available after the campaign tutorial here. But we'll talk about chat in a little bit too. Obviously, Orgrimmar is a big city, lots to explore and take a look at. A lot of the buildings, you don't really need to go into every single one of them. You'll kind of get familiar into like what the important ones are. The three most important buildings are inns. That's where you can set your Hearthstone. We haven't gotten yet, so I'm assuming it's going to guide us through that. Inns. Most popular one in Orgrimmar is down here in the Valley of Strength, because down here in the Valley of Strength, there is also a bank. That's where you get extra storage. And then there's the auction house where you can go to sell things to other players or buy things. So we got the Mount Trainer, Tawny Windrider. Puts that in my inventory. And I right click, use, teaches you how to summon this mount. The capabilities of this mount depend on your riding skill and location. So we added the Tawny Wind Rider to my collection. I clicked on the icon to open the mount window. This can also be opened by clicking Shift and P on your keyboard. And then you can drag your mount down to a key or a key binding. And we'll talk about reconfiguring the key bindings in a little bit
Ready to make
for our
some
next
dough?
session. We can also speak to Thiga Graveblade to learn about combat specializations.
I'll be seeing. Let's
So
visit
we'll
a trainer to learn about specializing
grab
your
that.
skills.
And I'm just walking, but you could just click your mount and boom, there you go. You get a little mount to run around on. Looks like they've lumped all the trainers together, so we're going to go talk to the rogue trainer, and she's going to tell us about specializations. Assassination rogues are deadly masters of poison. Outlaw, ruthless fugitives who use agility and guile. Subtlety rogues are the dark stalkers that leap from the shadows. Cool. And then it will have us activate a talent combat specialization. So we're going to save that one for next time. Thank you for watching episode 1 of the New Player's Guide to Retail World of Warcraft. I'm going to try and get a handful of videos out over the next week or two. There'll be VODs on YouTube and Twitch first, and then I'll break them down into smaller videos that go over some of the key areas that'll be get started. Like I said, first goal is to reach level 70. Then what we're going to have to do is buy the expansion. So we're going to have to cough up that $25. Hopefully we buy it while it's still on sale. And then what we're going to do is level through that expansion to level 80. And then at level 80, we'll start with the real end game conversation, what to do, how to get your character geared up, ready to start doing all the things that the game has to offer at the end game. It was a joke in South Park, what do we do now? Endgame really truly is where the time sink is in World of Warcraft. The leveling experience is going to be relatively quick. You can see here we already got 11 levels, so we need 60 more to go. It took a lot longer just because I was talking and walking through things. It goes pretty fast. So we'll talk about the different ways that you can get to level 70 depending on where you're at in the game. We'll walk through it from the pure new player perspective the next time that we hop on. Thanks for watching and have a good one.